Welcome back to Pro Build 360 TV and welcome to the Onsite podcast. My guest today is Jonathan Handford, Managing Director and Non-Exec Director of Fine and Country. Jonathan, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I guess probably appropriate to start with why I've got two roles and job titles as such, and actually I think there's probably four roles that I've got within the business at Fine and Country. I've been with it practically since its inception, so a long time. So Fine and Country now is 25 years old. And I'll talk a little bit about the part of the market that we focus on a little bit later, but we were one of the first license holders. So it's not quite a franchise, it's more of a license business. Yeah. And we own a lot of the licenses in and around the predominantly the Midlands area. Yeah. But I also work on the Fine and Country board as a non-exec director, so which is part of the head office team, which helps because it sort of gives me a hand on the steering wheel to help the direction of the business and to give them a perspective from the coalface as an estate agent. And I also do quite a bit of coaching and training with head office, and again I get outsourced to different Fine and Country licenses.
Cool. I didn't know you do that.
Yeah, so it helps me to travel and get to know the network a little bit better. Yeah. But the fourth element of my role, and this is by far the most important one, is I'm still very much in the muck and bullets of being an estate agent and doing the job.
Because you love it.
Yeah.
I've known you long enough now to know that you just love it. You can't stop.
Well, I've just Friday completed on a sale of a £2 million property in Leamington. It's the second time that I've sold it within the last 4 years.
Well, you were alluding earlier to some of the accolades and some of the achievements, and just to give our audience an idea of quite your level of experience, so that when we go into the further conversation, would you just expand on your experience, your credentials, some of the achievements of your career?
Yeah, okay.
Without wanting to...
struggle a little bit with imposter syndrome. So talking through it is sometimes a little bit difficult. But I'm a qualified estate agent. You don't need to be to work in this industry, which is a sad indictment of the profession. Yeah. The vast majority aren't. And like I said, I take my job and my role very seriously within the business and also within the industry. And within Fine and Country, we've been recognised with several awards. Even just last week, we had the international awards where my team, my local team, if you like, in Leamington Spa, we were recognised with Best Midlands Operator, Best UK Operator, Best European Operator, and then Best International Operator.
That's amazing.
And then I'm also delighted to say that I walked away with the Outstanding Contribution Award. So it was a really pleasant experience. I'm still sleeping with my awards now.
You're going to leave some for the others?
Yeah, somebody did come up to me at the end of the evening and put their hands on my shoulder and said, "Look, better luck next year," which was quite comical.
That's a good reaction.
But I'm very fortunate. We've got a well-established team, got some really good people within that business. The likes of James, Nicola, Sarah Angela, Amrita. We have a really robust team with lots of different people that all bring something different to the table. We've all got different skill sets. We've managed to carve out a niche in the upper quartile of the market. And it's interesting. You look at the housing market in general. If you think of it as 100%, 0 to 75% is what we would call the mass market. Yeah. And Fine and Country caters for the upper quartile, the top 25%.
Premium real estate, yeah.
Absolutely. And then within that, the top 10% is what I would classify as the prime market, and then the top super 1% prime is the super prime. But yeah, the upper quartile is the top 25%, and really the nature of our marketing and our campaigns, it lends itself to that top 25%.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was when you're looking at, let's talk about sort of like prime and super prime. What are the features of properties like that are most sought after, and what sort of elements of a really, really top end property that add to its value substantially?
Specifically within that local Warwickshire area, or are you talking in general across the whole?
Tell me both.
So look, there are tangible factors that come with property. The tangibles, those variables are size, style, location, grounds, condition, aspects, environmental factors. They're the tangibles.
The things you can't do anything about.
Where you can, because again, you can renovate them, you can change them, you can extend it, you can make stuff bigger, you can acquire neighbouring land, but they're the tangible factors that draw people in, and they're the things that determine value as to whether it would sit in that prime market. So, but not everybody wants lots of land. Some people want prime town centre or city centre living where they've got close access to close proximity to schools, whereas others they're okay in a 2,500 square foot house as long as it's in 50 acres of land and they're a million miles away. So for each person, it's got a slightly different. Personal, it's got a slightly different set of criteria as to what's important to them. But if you were to look as a sweeping brush of how you would determine what sits in that top 10%, they're the factors that will underpin it.
Well, I'll tell you what. As I was thinking about our conversation today, what I described to myself as a house, because you said I like something that's done well, right? How I would describe that sort of same sentiment is a house that's designed, a home that's designed, that gives credence to the land use, the heritage, and it looks like it's supposed to be there, and it looks like it was always there, almost like it was extrapolated out of the ground itself. That to me is what a beautifully designed home is, and it might be more modern, it might be more traditional, but if it looks like it has always been there since the beginning of time and it will always be there long after we're gone, that's what I class as a beautiful home. So
because our journey as agents is we generally start with the appraisal, and the appraisal, I mean, thankfully these days you can do a lot of research prior to even stepping foot on the house. You can do aerial tours, you can look around from the outside, get a real feel for the area, but you just know that photogenic property that you're going to get there and think, God, this is going to look great in a brochure and on a video. And then there are others where you look and think, oh God, this is because of a tree line, because of what's behind it, whatever it may be, and you just think this is going to be a battle to bring it to life and try and show people what's here. But there are others that you look and think, I could stand in any one of 8 different positions around the periphery of this property.
From every angle, it's a dream.
And the biggest headache that I've got is working out what's going to be the money shot, the best picture within the campaign, and the one that I've got to lead with in all of my things, because it looks so good from every angle. And you could ask 8 different people and get 8 different opinions. So I completely get what you mean by, it just looks right.
It just looks like it's meant to be there, and it always has been, and it always will be. That's how when I was thinking about our conversation today, that's what jumped out at me when I was thinking about what makes a real dream home.
I
wanted also to talk about sort of the planning system, and don't mean to bring down from that wonderful conversation and that sort of inspirational things that we've been talking about, and don't want to bring the tone down, but it's something that we have to talk about because that's kind of why we do what we do. So the planning system, I think it's stuck, not fit for purpose. SMEs are being crushed, much like the farmers, much like many sort of industries. The local level SMEs, higher quality, less mass-produced businesses are being crushed through contributions to things that are not necessarily part of what their business is, and restrictions and all kinds of bad policy, basically. The industry is becoming more consolidated into the hands of a fewer number of much larger entities. Their products being, I speak my mind, lower quality, mass-produced product compared to a design-led, higher quality product from the SMEs. What I'm afraid of is that we're going to reduce the level of choice, a variety of product on the market, take the character out of what English housing looks like. There's nothing you can't build at the local level anything that's a bit elevated in its aspirations for the design and the materials and that sort of stuff. It just doesn't seem like you can get that stuff through planning. And then you're getting sort of like the working class and the middle class sort of just become one big blob now. But then you have these things like paragraph 79 country houses that you're talking like £10 million homes. So almost policies that are purporting to level the playing field, get people on the property ladder and so on and so forth, might be doing that to a certain extent, but they're also kind of creating a much bigger divide between the super elite, super wealthy. We were talking about this before, so I think you agree somewhat with my analysis of it, but I wanted you to just muse on that for a moment and what you think the remedies for that pattern might be.
Yeah, so look, I think policy broken is a good reference, and it is a frustration for people. So to break that down into different sections, planning, yeah, it is a frustration, and it is massively inconsistent.
Yes,
and that is one of my biggest frustrations when dealing with people, because even if you've got a precedent where you've got one house that's got something in place, and somebody says, "Well, we get this next door." My textbook answer to that is I just don't know.
Yeah, you can't. There's no predictability at all.
Yeah, so we're governed by certain restrictions in terms of what we can and can't say and what we can promise, and obviously you want to under-promise, over-deliver. But you can look at a precedent and think, well, logic would dictate that you should be able to get that, but it depends who you get, who the planning officer is, what their appetite is. Whether they've had a good or bad day, whether they've been had 100%. Breakfast, whether they've had a cup of coffee,
whether they've got any experience in the administration of planning applications. Because unfortunately, a hell of a lot of planning officers that are being put in place now, because there are no planning officers, they're just going, anyone just come here and do it. People that are not from the property market, not from industry, they've never built houses, they've never administered a planning application.
So you're right, and that bureaucracy, I think, I hate bureaucracy. It's one of my biggest frustrations, and we get it. 40% of what we sell are listed buildings.
Yes.
So only 2% of the property stock in the whole of the UK are listed buildings. So for Fine and Country to sell 40% is quite a significant portion.
Yeah.
And obviously what we have is to contend with his listed building consent. And before I put a house on the market, I need to establish that everything's been done and is in place before I launch that property to the market, because there's an inkling that anything's missing. It's going to be an obstacle that we're going to need to deal with, and dealing with that in the conveyancing process is never fun. So let's try and iron out the creases in advance.
Yeah.
So I think the inconsistency is really frustration. The length of time that it takes is frustrating. There's no logical reason why it should take as long as it does. And coming back to your point about this divide and these big estates, I live on one myself. I live south of the river in Leamington. I wanted to be close to where my son was going to go to school, and it was the perfect location for us, which is why I picked it. But that niche market of that upper quartile where you've got those smaller but more exclusive estates, they just don't exist. And obviously you've got the requirement for social housing, which is fine, I get that.
Just like Hawks Farm.
You've got community levies in place which you need to play, and I get that, everyone's got to play a part. But the bureaucracy around getting those things and putting them in place, and I know that these bigger builders do bigger deals, and it's easier for the council to be able to say, there's 1,000 houses there, rather than, well, let's look at this exclusive state where we can get a little bit of innovation, we can get something different, we can develop the character of the town and the location by putting something a bit more niche in there. And you're right, you've just got this bigger divide where you've got that super prime 1% where they've got the paragraph
0.001% really we're talking, aren't we?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. There's quite a few of those individual builds, those architecturally significant things where you think, how on earth have they got planning there? But you're right, it's almost underpinning the gap that's developing between the mass market and that super prime, and it's not right, and it's a shame. But I don't think the council have got an appetite to change anytime soon.
No.
I avoid working in that sector because of all of that red tape, because of all that bureaucracy. Working within planning, consultancy, all of those things, got a lot of experience. But I look and think, actually, I'm very binary on ones and zeros. It either it is or it isn't, and it'd frustrate the life out of me working in that sector.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, doing what we're doing. I mean, Hawks Farm, for example. And there's several other development sites that we've got in planning. They're just stuck.
Yeah,
they're just stuck. And we're here as a company with our brand and our philosophy and our vision for what we build, offering something, an alternative, an elevated alternative, and we're the ones that are waiting and getting utterly incompetent administration of the applications to the point where you suspect that it's being frustrated on purpose.
But I can't, sorry to jump in.
No,
I don't think that is, I don't want to get on my high horse here and start bashing government and council and the individuals that work there and the policy and other things. But for instance, Stratford Council, for a long time, has been widely known as being the slowest in the whole of the UK for putting local searches together, and it's almost a badge they wear with pride. And you think, no, people's livelihood, people's lives, and other professionals' livelihoods are all waiting on what should be very simple documentation.
Builders like carpenters and plumbers and bricklayers and the house building industries are
integral.
I don't know the data on it. I should do, being in the position that I'm in. But it's a huge chunk of construction, and some builders are just house builders. That's what they build.
Yeah,
they don't do commercial stuff. They're house builders like myself. And if you're holding up the house building market, what are these guys supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And look, I know we shouldn't deviate too much from the topic, but I think it was Labour back in 2005, 2006. They set a quota to build 250,000 houses.
Yeah.
No one's come anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Even all of these years on, we were fast approaching 20 years. No one's come close to that. There is a massive shortage of housing.
Yeah.
If you want to look at why house prices are rising so rapidly, it's because not enough houses are being built.
Supply and demand. Simple economics.
And we'll get people jump in and they'll say it's outrageous, that's overpriced. And 2 weeks later, we've sold it. And I almost feel like going in and tagging the people that almost questioning our valuation, saying it's not overpriced. It's only worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it.
Yeah.
The reason why prices are so high is simply supply and demand.
Yeah.
There is a lot of supply and there's not enough demand, and that's not going to change until you build more housing, and that's not going to change until councils and government change their policy and make it easier to build.
Well, in 1989, I think it is, SMEs delivered, I think it was, let me get this right, I think it was something like 39% of housing, right, was SMEs delivering that. Now it's less than 10%, it's about 7 or 8%.
Yeah.
And that's a worrying thing. It's not just, I've already mentioned about how SMEs are the ones that are going to deliver you quality, high quality, design-led, interesting, characterful homes. They're also the ones that will add to the numbers that you can deliver.
Yeah.
Like, bring us back into the game. But to bring us back into the game, you've got to recognise that we're not Bovis. We're not, and I'm not. I was at Bovis. I've been at Carla, Bellway. All the big boys. So I understand how it works and the games they play. But you've got to unlock it for the SMEs, and you can only do that by accepting that we're playing a different game.
Yeah,
and it's land allocation as well. The land allocation for housing, it's so poorly done, and it's almost like they're trying to tell the SMEs, look, just give it up, because they're allocating sites that are like 1,000 units at a time.
Yeah.
Where are the little parcels?
Yeah.
Where are the little 1 acre parcels? So that land allocation is another thing that needs to be fixed.
And again, I know we talked about this earlier. The economy is driven by expenditure.
Yes.
And at the minute, the number of housing transactions, I think people assume that estate agents want high prices. We don't want high prices. We want volume. We want turnover. We want activity. The gap between people moving is increasing. And it's increasing because it's becoming more and more expensive to move. Cost of entry is more expensive. Cost of exit is more expensive. Cost of borrowing is more expensive. Stamp duty is disproportionately high, and I think it's a bit of a false economy on the government's part to maintain such high levels for stamp duty, because the revenue that they would get from all of the trades that support the housing market,
if you stimulated the market,
it grew exponentially. And if you just made the stamp duty, but they're trying to ring fence and protect that. And for me, it's very short sighted. So build more. Make it more affordable for people to move. It then makes it easier for people to move along the rungs of the ladder. And what you're finding is people are going from a starter home to their forever home. And that's not really healthy. You need the in-betweens, you need the other bits.
That's my point. A bit of social mobility, like a clear sort of middle stepping stone period of your life that, you're shopping in Waitrose and, buying a beautiful 5-bed that your kids can grow up in before you get to doing your food shopping in Harrods and living in a manor. You got to get that go in increments. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming in today. I know how busy you are, but you've always been such a good friend of the company and of the family, so it was brilliant to see you, and thank you for your insights. I've learned a lot from this one, actually, personally.